You ever meet someone and instantly feel like something's different? Not fireworks, different, not lightning strike, different, just quietly, unmistakably off track from what you expected your day to be? That was me. Tuesday morning, standing in line at my usual coffee spot before work, mentally checking off everything I had to do that day. Emails, budget reports, lunch with the new intern. Nothing exciting. Just another Tuesday. And then I noticed the guy in front of me. He wasn't doing anything dramatic. Just standing there, one hand on the counter, the other digging for his wallet. But something about him caught me. Maybe it was the way he was talking to the barista. Low voice, calm, kind. Maybe it was the way he laughed when she asked if he wanted a pastry. Or maybe I'm just lonely and it doesn't take much these days. He ordered a black coffee and an almond croissant. Simple. Efficient. Then he turned around, and for a second, just a second, our eyes met. And I felt it. That thing. That little spark of, oh. He was older than me, maybe mid-30s. Clean shaven, dark hair, those warm eyes that make you feel like they've already forgiven you for whatever dumb thing you're about to say. He gave me a nod. Just polite, like, yep, I see you, and then stepped aside to wait for his drink. I stepped up to order, trying to act normal. Large cold brew, no room. The barista smiled like she knew something I didn't. New face, she said, nodding toward him. Huh, she leaned in. He doesn't come here usually. I think he's from the building across the street. Construction firm. I glanced over. He was scrolling through his phone now, completely unaware I was suddenly invested in his life story. That's so? I said, trying to sound casual. Cute, right? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. When I got my drink, he was still there, waiting on his croissant, and before I could chicken out, I said it. Hey, you from the construction office across the street? He looked up, surprised, then smiled. Yeah, just started working out of there last week. You work nearby? Yeah, 3rd floor of the Barclay building. Accounting firm. Cool, he said. I'm Ethan. I told him my name, Mark, and we shook hands. His grip was solid, warm. I tried not to overanalyze it. We talked for maybe a minute. Nothing deep. Just enough to find out he used to live in Boston, moved here recently for a project, and yeah, this was his first time at this cafe. Then his croissant came. He gave me another one of those easy smiles and said, Nice to meet you, Mark. Yeah, I said. You too. And that should have been it. Except 2 days later, he was there again. Same time. Same order. And this time, he stood next to me while we waited. You a creature of habit too? He asked, holding up his black coffee like a toast. I laughed. Pretty much. Same drink every time. Respect, he said. We talked again, a little longer this time. I learned he used to do residential projects, but now he was mostly focused on commercial spaces. I asked if he liked it. He paused. I like building things. Watching something go from paper to real. There's something satisfying about it. I nodded. Yeah, I get that. What about you? He asked. You like your job? And for some reason, I didn't lie. It's fine, I said. Pays the bills. Doesn't exactly make my heart race. He smiled again. Well, if it ever stops paying the bills, let me know. I always need someone who's good with numbers. I laughed, but part of me wasn't sure he was joking. Then he glanced at his phone and said he had to run. Another, nice seeing you. And he was gone. But I was hooked. Not in the, I'm gonna stalk his Instagram kind of way. Just curious. Intrigued. Whatever. He started showing up regularly. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Always around 8:15. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes just nodded. But by the 3rd week, it felt weird when he wasn't there. Then one morning, I got there late. Like, really late. Overslept, spilled toothpaste on my shirt, whole 9 yards. I showed up at the cafe 10 minutes before my 9 o'clock meeting, ready to grab my drink and bolt. And Ethan was there. Not just there, waiting, holding 2 drinks. He spotted me, smiled, and held one out. "Thought I missed you," he said. "Figured you were running late." I blinked. "You got me a coffee?" He shrugged, like it was nothing. "Large cold brew. No room, right?" I took it. My fingers brushed his, warm again. "Thanks," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't have to do that." He looked at me for a second longer than he needed to. I wanted to. After that morning, it became our thing. Not the coffee exactly, though, yeah, he still bought mine every now and then, but the presence, the ritual. The way we'd stand near each other in that noisy little cafe, tucked away from the rest of the world, like we were in our own pocket of time. It's weird how fast something like that can start to matter. I didn't even know his last name, didn't have his number, but every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there he was. Same time, same smile, and the way my mood lifted when I saw him. Man, I hated how obvious it probably was. The first time we sat down together was unplanned. The cafe was packed, and I'd gotten there early for once. I was halfway through checking emails when I saw him walk in, rain dripping off his jacket. He scanned the room and spotted me, raised a hand. I nodded toward the chair across from me, and just like that, we were sharing a table. "You always this early?" he asked, peeling off his jacket. "Today's a fluke," I said. I woke up and actually felt like a human being, so I rolled with it. He laughed, shaking rain from his hair. "Those are rare mornings." We talked about the weather, the city, construction delays. And somewhere in there, I told him about my boss. Phil, the kind of guy who still says, "Per my last email," unironically. Ethan snorted. "Sounds like a blast." Phil's the reason I take long coffee breaks. "That's fair," he said. "I do the same." I don't know what it was about that day, but it felt easier. Like something had shifted between us. Maybe just proximity. Maybe time. Maybe the fact that I'd started looking forward to our mornings more than anything else in my week. A few weeks later, we finally exchanged numbers. It wasn't a big moment. No fanfare. Just him holding out his phone and saying, "In case we ever miss each other," for coffee emergencies. I typed in my number, saved his contact as Ethan, coffee guy. Later that night, he texted, "Ethan, you seem like the kind of guy who actually reads the fine print. Only if it's in a font big enough to read before my second coffee." Ethan, noted. Next one's on me. We texted more after that, not constantly, but enough. Jokes, memes, photos of terrible lunches. He sent me one of a wilted salad with the caption, "This is a cry for help." I sent one of my cat laying on my laptop with the caption, "She just filed a 1099. It was easy, light, effortless. But under it all, there was something else building. Something I didn't quite know how to name. One morning, he didn't show up. No warning. No text. I waited longer than usual, sipping my drink, pretending not to glance at the door every time it opened. Nothing. By the time I got to work, I'd convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe he overslept. Maybe a meeting ran long. Maybe he had a life outside of our 3 mornings a week banter. Then, around noon, I got a message. "Ethan, hey, sorry. Had to fly out last minute. Site check up north. Back Friday. All good. Thought maybe you finally got sick of my coffee rants. Ethan, never." You're my favorite part of this job, if I'm being honest. I stared at that message longer than I probably should have. Don't say stuff like that unless you mean it. Ethan, I do, every word. That Friday he was back, and something had changed. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, hair a little messier than usual, but when he saw me, he smiled like it was the first good thing that had happened all week. I didn't say anything, just handed him a coffee. He looked down at it, then back at me. "You remembered my order." "Of course I did." We didn't sit down, didn't talk much. Just stood there on the sidewalk in the morning chill, sipping in silence. After a while, he said, "You free tonight?" I looked up. "Tonight?" He nodded. "I was gonna order takeout and crash, but I don't know. I'd rather not eat alone." I hesitated for a second, then, "Yeah, I'm free." "Cool," he said casually. "I'll text you the address." He didn't make it a big deal. But my heart was pounding. Ethan's apartment was in one of those newer mid-rise buildings across from the park. Glass panels, balconies with potted plants, a concierge who gave me a suspicious once-over when I walked in, holding a bottle of wine and a tote bag full of snacks. His place was on the 5th floor, corner unit. When he opened the door, he was barefoot, wearing a t-shirt and joggers, looking exhausted but grinning like he'd just won something. "You came," he said, stepping back to let me in. "You asked." I replied, brushing past him, suddenly hyper-aware of how good he smelled, something woodsy and clean. Inside, the place was simple, not messy, just lived in. A pair of running shoes near the door, a hoodie draped over a chair, a set of blueprints rolled up on the counter. "You want a beer or water or—" "I brought wine," I said, holding it up. He raised an eyebrow. "Classy. I try." We ate on his couch, take-out Thai, no plates, just cartons and chopsticks, and one very precarious napkin situation. The TV was on in the background, something low and forgettable, just to fill the space. But we didn't really need it. We talked. About everything, about nothing. About how construction projects never actually stay on schedule, and how my boss Phil once used Comic Sans in a client-facing proposal and somehow didn't get fired. "I'd fire him just for owning a mouse pad," Ethan joked, grinning around a mouthful of noodles. "You use a trackpad?" "I use my brain." He shot back, and I laughed harder than I should have. It wasn't a date, not officially, but it also wasn't not. Around 10:30, after 2 beers and most of the wine, we were still on the couch, sitting a little closer than necessary. My legs were crossed toward him. His arm was on the backrest behind me. We weren't touching, but the air between us felt like it had weight. He looked at me, serious for the first time all night. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," I said, trying not to sound nervous. "Why'd you say yes to coming here, I mean?" I blinked. "Because I wanted to. That's it. What else is there?" He looked away for a second. Then, "I'm not great at this." "At what?" He hesitated. "Whatever this is." I knew what he meant. I sat forward a little, putting my drink down. "Look, I'm not trying to rush anything. If this is just 2 guys eating noodles and shooting the shit, that's fine. I'm good with that." He didn't say anything right away. Then he leaned in slightly, arms still resting on the back of the couch. "I think I like you," he said, quiet. I smiled before I could stop myself. "I think I like you too." He let out a breath, like he'd been holding it in. Then, slowly, carefully, he shifted closer. Our legs brushed. "I've never done this before," he added, almost a whisper. I tilted my head. "This? Liked a guy." I stayed quiet for a second, then I nodded. "Okay." He looked at me like he was waiting for a sign, so I gave him one. I leaned in. The kiss wasn't dramatic. Wasn't fire and thunder. It was careful, slow, real. His lips were warm, a little dry. His hand hovered near my shoulder, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to touch me yet. When we pulled apart, I opened my eyes and found him already looking at me. "Still okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, still okay." We didn't kiss again right away. We just sat there for a while. Close, quiet, calm. Eventually, he leaned back and let his arm fall behind me, his fingers lightly brushing my shoulder. Not possessive, not rushed, just there. That night, I didn't stay over. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted him to have time. Space. As I left, he walked me to the door, hands in the pockets of his joggers. "You're coming back, right?" he asked. I smiled. "Count on it." We didn't talk the next day, not because anything was wrong, but because it felt like that kind of silence, the good kind. Like the moment had landed, and neither of us wanted to step on it too quickly. Still, I checked my phone more than I want to admit. When the text finally came, it was short. "Ethan, just thinking about last night. Hope you're good." "I'm good. You?" "Ethan. Yeah, really good. Weirdly calm." That made me smile. Weirdly calm was exactly how I felt too. We didn't see each other again until Wednesday morning. I'd been up half the night working on quarterly reports and was running late. I almost skipped my usual coffee stop, but then I saw him leaning against the brick wall outside the cafe, holding 2 drinks. "You're late," he said with a grin. "You're early," I shot back, taking the coffee he handed me. He shrugged. "Didn't want to miss you." We stood there for a minute, just sipping, not really saying anything. Then he bumped his shoulder against mine. "You coming over Friday?" "Thought you'd never ask." He grinned into his cup. That Friday, he cooked. Well, attempted to cook. I showed up around 7 with a bottle of red and low expectations. He was in the kitchen, barefoot again, a tea towel slung over one shoulder, and the smell of something vaguely tomato-like drifting through the air. "Chef Ethan," I said, stepping inside. "Don't get used to it," he muttered. I almost set off the smoke alarm twice. We ate on the couch again. Spaghetti that was a little too soft, sauce that was clearly jarred, and garlic bread that honestly slapped. He looked at me halfway through and said, "Don't judge." "I'm not judging," I said. "I'm impressed. You actually fed me carbs." He gave me that look, the one where his mouth twitches like he's holding back a smile, but his eyes give him away. "I like when you're here," he said. It hit me harder than it should have. "Yeah?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He nodded. "It's different, not just the company. It's like, I don't feel like I have to be anything." I swallowed. "That's kind of a big deal." "Yeah," he said quietly. "It is." We didn't kiss right after that. We just sat there, close, his knee brushing mine. But later, when the dishes were in the sink, and the wine was nearly gone, and we were on the couch again, half watching something on Netflix we weren't really paying attention to, he leaned in. This time, it was different, less tentative, more certain. His hand found my jaw. My fingers slid around his neck. His body shifted, leaning into mine, the kind of weight that says, "I trust you." When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "Okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I whispered. "More than okay." We moved to the bedroom without talking. Clothes came off slowly, like we were unwrapping something we didn't want to break. It wasn't closeness, not yet. It was just skin and breath and warmth, his fingers tracing my back, my mouth against his collarbone. The quiet gasp he made when I kissed the scar on his shoulder. It was careful, but not distant. We didn't say much, just small things. "You feel good." "I've never done this like this." "I know." Eventually we just lay there, naked but not exposed, wrapped in the quiet kind of closeness that doesn't need definition. He fell asleep with his hand on my chest. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to stay awake and guard the moment. I just let it be. The next morning felt different. Not in the awkward, what did we just do kind of way. More like waking up in a hotel bed on vacation, slightly disoriented, very warm, and not in a rush to go anywhere. I opened my eyes to sunlight peeking through Ethan's curtains. He was still asleep, chest rising slowly, one arm slung across my waist, like it had ended up there by instinct. I didn't move, didn't want to move. Not just because I didn't want to wake him, but because this weight, this heat, this quiet, felt like something I hadn't realized I was missing. Eventually, he stirred. I felt him shift before I heard his voice, low and rough with sleep. "You still here?" "Yeah." He smiled into the pillow. "Good." His hand flexed slightly against my stomach, and I felt a chill run through me, like my body was still catching up to what my mind already knew. This was real. We stayed in bed longer than we probably should have. No alarms, no phones, no obligations. Just limbs tangled under the covers and casual conversation drifting in and out between stretches of silence. "Do you always sleep like that?" I asked at one point. "Like what?" "Like a dog claiming territory," he chuckled. "Sorry, I'm a cuddler." "I noticed. You didn't seem to mind." I didn't answer. Just nudged his foot with mine under the sheets. He shifted closer and pressed a kiss to my shoulder. No hesitation this time. No asking for permission. Later, he made coffee in nothing but boxers, while I sat on a bar stool, shirtless, watching him fumble with the French press like it was an ancient artifact. "You make it look harder than it is," I teased. "That's what she said," he muttered, deadpan. "You're the worst." He slid me a mug and grinned. "And yet, you're still here. You're lucky I'm low maintenance." We ate toast and fruit and whatever leftovers he had in his fridge that didn't smell like regret. And the whole time, I kept waiting for something to shift. For the air to change. For either of us to say or do something that would make it weird. But it never came. Around noon, I got dressed and started gathering my things. Ethan stood by the door, arms crossed, watching me. "You don't have to go," he said. I looked up. "You got something else in mind?" He shrugged. "Just didn't expect to feel this bummed about someone putting their socks on." I smiled. "I'll see you Monday." He stepped forward, close enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath. "You sure?" "Positive." He kissed me then, short, soft. Then he opened the door, and I stepped out into the hall. The air outside felt colder. Not weather-wise, just different. Like I'd walked out of something warm and private into a world that hadn't quite caught up yet. But I didn't mind. Because now I had something to look forward to. The weirdest thing about falling for someone slowly is that half the time you don't even realize it's happening until something small clicks and you can't unsee it. For me, it was a Tuesday. We were grabbing lunch, sitting outside a little deli near my office. The kind of place with cheap sandwiches, flimsy napkins, and plastic chairs that somehow always creaked like they were about to collapse. We'd eaten here before, but this time was different. This time, Ethan reached across the table and wiped a smudge of mustard from the corner of my mouth. Casual, thoughtless, like it was something he'd done 100 times. And I just sat there, stunned, not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't, because it felt like something people in relationships do. Like we were one of those couples you walk past and think, they've been together for a while. And I realized I liked that. I liked being seen with him. After lunch, he walked me back toward my building. The sidewalk was busy, noisy, full of people rushing and honking and living their lives. But then, out of nowhere, he reached for my hand. Just like that. No warning, no big gesture. His fingers laced through mine like it was nothing, like we'd always done it. And I felt my stomach flip. "You okay?" he asked, not looking at me. "Yeah," I said, barely keeping my voice steady. "You got quiet." I looked at him. "I just realized I'm holding hands with a guy in broad daylight on a Tuesday." He gave me a crooked smile. "Is that a problem?" "No," I said. "It's just new." "Same," he said. "But it feels right." And it did. We kept walking, fingers locked, past strangers and shop windows and bus stops. I didn't let go. That Friday, I invited him over for the first time. He showed up with a six-pack and a container of those cookies from the cafe we both liked, just handed them to me like a peace offering for no reason at all. "You didn't have to bring anything," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "Cookies are never a bad idea." He looked around my place like he was trying to map me out. I watched his eyes trail over the photos on the shelf, the worn-out throw blanket, the stack of books on my coffee table I hadn't actually finished reading. "This feels like you," he said. "Messy? Comfortable," he corrected, walking over to my record player. "You actually use this?" "Yeah," I said. "Vinyl makes everything sound better. Especially bad moods." He raised an eyebrow. "Put something on." So I did. Some lo-fi indie band I liked. He nodded along, then sank into my couch like he'd always belonged there. We didn't do anything special. Just hung out. Talked. Laughed. Ordered pizza. I showed him my high school yearbook. He made fun of my haircut. At one point, he looked at me, completely serious, and said, "I feel more like myself when I'm with you." And I didn't know what to say, so I just leaned in and kissed him. Longer this time. Slower. His hand slid into my hair, and I let mine rest on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his breath. He didn't stay over that night. Not because I didn't want him to, but because he had work early the next day. As he was leaving, he kissed me once more in the doorway. Gentle. Focused, like he didn't want it to end. Then he stepped back and said, "Next time, I'll stay." And that felt like a promise. I started keeping a toothbrush in his bathroom. It wasn't official or anything. I didn't announce it, didn't ask permission. I just left it there one weekend and noticed it was still sitting in the holder a week later, next to his, like it belonged. That's how most things with Ethan happened. Unspoken, unrushed, just there. By late April, he was staying over more often than not. We never called it moving in, never talked about logistics. But he had a drawer in my dresser, a charger by my bed, socks in my laundry basket. We were building something, but we still hadn't defined it. Not really. One night, we were on my balcony. He had his legs stretched across my lap, and we were sipping beers, watching the city wind down. It was quiet, warm, the kind of night that made the world feel softer. And he said, "Do your friends know about me?" I looked over at him. "Some of them." He nodded. "Cool." There was a pause. Then he added, "I haven't told anyone." It wasn't bitter, just a fact. I looked at him, waiting. He didn't say more. So I asked, carefully, "Because you don't want to, or because you don't know how?" He rubbed his jaw, eyes on the skyline. Bit of both, I guess. I didn't push. I just nodded. But later that night, lying in bed, his hand on my chest, I asked, "Do you want to?" "Want to what?" "Tell them." He didn't answer right away. Then, "I want to." I exhaled. That's a start. We didn't talk about it again, but something shifted. Like the idea of us had finally stepped out of the private, warm corners of cafes and apartments and into the air where it could be examined. Touched. Challenged. The next week he invited me to a team barbecue. Just like that. No build-up. "Some of the guys are throwing something Saturday," he said over coffee. "You should come." I looked at him. "You want me to?" "Yeah," he said, instantly. "I do." So I went. It was a park thing. Burgers, beers, lawn chairs. I wore a button-up. He wore that gray t-shirt that fit a little too well. He didn't introduce me as his boyfriend, didn't call me anything, actually. But he stayed close, brought me a plate, laughed at my dumb jokes in front of his coworkers. And at one point, when we were standing near the cooler, he touched the small of my back in that way that felt unconscious. Like he wasn't even thinking about it. And one of the guys, some crew lead named Brandon, looked between us, then nodded once and said, "Glad you came, man." I nodded back. "Me too." That night, back at his place, Ethan was quiet. Not distant, just thoughtful. He stood in the kitchen, refilling our waters, then looked over and said, "That wasn't as hard as I thought it'd be." I smiled. "You did good. I think I'm done hiding." "Yeah?" "Yeah." He walked over and kissed me. Slow, certain, like he meant it. "Stay the night?" he asked. I leaned into him. "I'll stay as long as you want." It happened on a Sunday. We were at the grocery store. Just a regular errand run. Nothing romantic about it. I was comparing oat milk brands. Ethan was trying to find the least bruised bananas. We were debating whether we had enough garlic at home when I noticed this little kid, probably 6 or 7, watching us from his spot in the cart across the aisle. His mom was distracted, on her phone. The kid stared at us for a second, then asked, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Are you guys married?" I froze, oat milk in hand. Ethan turned, blinked, and then, without missing a beat, said, "Not yet." The mom snapped her head up, horrified. "I'm so sorry, but Ethan just smiled. "It's all right." We kept walking after that, but the comment stuck with me. "Not yet." In the car, I turned to him. "That didn't freak you out?" He shrugged, tossing a bag into the back seat. "Should it have?" Kind of a big thing to say. He leaned against the car and looked at me. "It wasn't a proposal. It was a joke." I nodded, trying to brush it off. "Right." But he stepped closer, rested a hand on my shoulder. "It's not that crazy, though, is it?" I stared at him. "Marriage? No us. Long term, the idea of it." I opened my mouth, closed it, then said, "I don't think it's crazy." He smiled. Small, warm. We drove home in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was thoughtful. Heavy, in a good way. Later that night, after dinner, we were doing dishes. I was rinsing, he was drying, and we were arguing about whether people actually need separate salad forks. Then he said, "Hey." I looked over. His voice dropped a little. "So what do you call me when you talk about me to other people?" I blinked. "I don't know. I usually just say, 'This guy I'm seeing.'" He nodded. "Okay." "You?" He hesitated. "I want to say boyfriend." I turned off the faucet. He kept drying the plate in his hands, but wasn't really looking at it anymore. "You want to?" "I do," he said. "But I didn't want to pressure you." I stepped closer, took the plate from him, and set it in the drying rack. Then I kissed him and said, "Say it." He looked at me, really looked, and said, "You're my boyfriend." I smiled. "Good," I said. "You're mine too." It didn't change everything all at once. We still had our routines, still met at the cafe some mornings, still spent too long choosing takeout on Friday nights, still watched bad movies and made fun of Phil from accounting, and got lazy about laundry. But there was a name for it now, and that made it real in a way it hadn't been before. He introduced me to his sister as his boyfriend. I took him to my best friend's birthday party, and when someone asked who he was, I didn't hesitate. We still had hard days, weeks where work drained us, times when we got quiet for no reason and had to figure out why. But we always came back, to each other, to the quiet mornings, and the soft laughter, and the hand brushing mine under the table. I used to think love was loud, but with Ethan, it was calm. It was coming home and finding a coffee mug already waiting. It was holding hands in line at the grocery store and not caring who saw. It was him, one morning, handing me my coffee and saying, "We're out of almond milk. Want to get some after work?" Like forever was just another errand. And I said, "Yeah, let's go together."